Welcome back to Latin class. Today we're going to cover Chapter 3 in Wheelock's Latin, 7th edition, the second declension masculine nouns and adjectives, apposition, and word order. So I'm on page 23 of Wheelock. The second declension follows the rule you learned for the first declension, the base plus the endings. The endings differ from those of the first declension, except in the dative and ablative plural, etc. All right, so the same thing as we learned in Chapter 2. We're dealing with nouns, and the nouns need to show their case, nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, ablative. They need to show whether they are singular or plural. So here are the endings, and well, the full form and the endings, for amicus. Amicus means friend. So we have in the nominative singular amicus, and then genitive singular amici, dative amico, accusative amicum, ablative amico. And then in the plural, amici, amicorum, amicis, amicos, amicis. So the endings are us, o, orum, os, is. So just like with the first declension, you need to learn those so deeply in your memory that you can be aroused from sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning by your roommate, shake you awake, and say, tell me the second declension masculine endings for amicus. You need to be able to say, ussi, oum, o, orum, isos, is. Make the flashcard, study it, so that you can do it by rote. And obviously that will be on the quiz on Friday. He then talks to you about what happens when a noun has an E in it. So I'm on page 24 now, where he talks about augur and puer. So the only tricky thing is that augur can drop that E. That E isn't accented. So it goes augur, augri, agro, agrum, agro, etc. Whereas puer, come down here and type this. Puer keeps the E in it. Puer, and then the genitive singular pueri. So you can take a look at those again on page 24. But those endings are what you want to learn this week. Us, o, orum, os, is. So let's just skip over to page 25 where it says apposition. And a positive from ad next to plus pono positus to set or position is a noun that is positioned next to another noun as an explanatory equivalent. So he gives the example here of Gaium filium meum in agro video. I see Gaius, my son, in the field. So let's get that typed out here on our screen. Gaium filium meum in agro video. I see is the verb. I see. Gaius, Gaium. It's the ending, right? Because it's accusative. It's the object of the verb. It's the thing that I am seeing. I see Gaius, my son, filium meum. That's also going to be accusative because it's simply referring to Gaium, right? So they're all referring to the same thing. So of course they take the same case. All right, very good. Word order, page 25. The typical word order in a simple Latin sentence or clause is the subject and its modifiers. And the subject is in what case? Subject is always in the nominative case. Then you'll probably see the indirect object and its modifiers. Then in what case is the indirect object in? The dative. The dative is the indirect object. 3, the direct object and its modifiers. What case is that? What's the direct object? The accusative. 4, you'll see adverbial words or phrases. Adverbs are words that describe how the verb works. So in English, they typically end in ly. So I ran quickly to the store. Quickly is an adverb. And then the verb. Remember, too, that adjectives and genitive nouns commonly follow the words they modify. However, although these patterns should be kept in mind, exceptions to these rules, especially for the purposes of variety and emphasis, were common in classical Latin. In fact, in highly inflected languages like Latin, the basic sense of a clause is somewhat independent of word order. Again, we talked about that a lot the first week and the second week. You need to know the ending. So he gives you several examples there on the bottom of the page of different word order. So the meaning of all these sentences in Latin is the boy is giving the pretty girl a rose. So you see in all these 4 different ways to order the words, they're all the same words, right? The boy, puer, nominative singular, so I know that's the subject. Dot, gives, is giving. A rose, that's in the accusative, so I know it's the direct object of the verb because it's accusative. The boy gives the rose to the pretty girl. That's dative. That ending I there is dative, so it tells you it's the indirect object. So you can put them in any order. All right, let's continue on page 27 with the vocabulary and go through that. Augur, and then the genitive singular they give you is agri, is a field or a farm, where we get words like agriculture. And then obviously the same thing with agricola. Agricola is a farmer. Notice agricola has a feminine forms, even though it refers to a man, a farmer. Agricola has feminine forms. Amicus, amici, is a friend. If it's amicus, it's a friend who's a boy. If it's amica, it's a friend who is a girl. So the masculine and feminine endings there. Femina, feminae, is a woman. Philia, filiae, is a daughter. Notice it has an irregular dative and ablative plural. So, some words are irregular. And so filiabus is the ablative and dative plural. So that's irregular. Make a note of that on your vocabulary card. Let's see here. Filius, filii is son. So it's obviously the masculine forms. Filius is son, filia daughter. Numerus, numeri is number. Populus, populi is people, a nation. So now you know why the Morthland interactive class website is called Populi. Puer, pueri is a boy. Sapientia, sapientiae is wisdom. Weary is a man or a hero. Obviously that one is declined, like puer. Typically just means man. Avarus, awara, avarum. Why are those listed that way? Avarus, awara, avarum. It's listed that way because these are adjectives. Words that describe nouns. So there was a man. What kind of man? A greedy man. There was a weir avarus. A weir avarus, a greedy man. Or there was a femina awara, a greedy woman. So here's something to note down in your notes. An adjective agrees with the noun it modifies in gender, number, and case. So we could also say weary awari, weary awari, of a greedy man. It's genitive singular. Weary is genitive singular masculine, so awaris has to change into awari, genitive singular masculine. Okay, or we could have feminis awaris. He gave money to the greedy women. Okay, so feminis is dative plural feminine, so awaris has to be dative plural feminine. So the adjectives agree with the noun they modify in gender, number, and case. Okay, Continuing with our vocabulary on page 27. Pauki means a few or a few, so pauki is nominative. Plural, because pauki always refers to more than one thing, a few. So pauki is masculine, paukai is feminine, and then pauka is neuter, which we haven't done much with, so don't worry about that. Romanus, Romano, Romanum obviously means Roman. De is a preposition which takes the ablative. You're going to want to note that on your vocabulary card. That de always takes the ablative case, always followed by the ablative. In is also a preposition that takes the ablative. So it takes the ablative. And that means in or on or into. Hodie is an adverb that means today. Semper means always. And these forms of the verb, habeo, habera, habui, and habitum, means to have, to hold, to possess, to regard. And satio, satyar, satyare, satyavi, satyatum, to I satisfy, and so forth. Okay. All right, let's do a couple sentences together before we close out for the day. So this is now on page 28. Obviously, you need to make your vocabulary cards, study them. That's just, we'll go through the vocabulary when we have these lessons, these video lessons, but it goes without saying you need to make your cards and study them. So on page 28, we'll look at exercitationes, number 2. Pueri, puelas, hodie, vocant. So what's the first step in translating? Find the verb and parse it. Where's the verb? Vocant is the verb. And that is present indicative active, because that's all we're working with so far. We know that much. So that's the voice, that's the mood, and that's the tense, present indicative active. But what person and number? Is it first person, second person, third person, singular or plural? It's third plural. So how do we translate it? They call. There's the skeleton of our sentence so far. They call. 2, is there a nominative? Is there a nominative to serve as the subject? It has to be plural since our verb is plural. Sure enough, we've got pueri, the boys. The boys call, or are calling, right? Present tense. Third, do we have an accusative to serve as the direct object? Sure we do. There's an accusative plural ending on puelas. So now we've got the boys are calling the girls. And 4, we add the rest of our words in an order. Well, here we've only got one more word, hodie. So it's today the boys are calling the girls. All right, very good. Next, let's see, we'll do number 6. Fortuna viros magnos amat. So same steps. Where's the verb? Parse it. It's amat. Present, indicative, active, third singular. He, she, it loves. Who loves? Is there a nominative? Serve as the subject? Yes, it's Fortuna. Luck loves. 3, is there an accusative to serve as the direct object? Sure enough, our last 2 words are accusative plural. Viros magnus. Luck loves great men. There you go. All right, so for lesson 3, obviously you need to make vocabulary cards of all the vocabulary words, and you need to make form cards, paradigm form cards for amicus and go ahead and make one for augur. Make those cards, study your vocabulary, study your cards. On the quiz, there'll be vocabulary. On the quiz, there will be these forms of amicus and augur, and augur, of course, has pretty much the same forms as puer. And one of these two sentences that we did, some question about one of these two sentences, will also be on the quiz. So study those things, and you'll be ready for the quiz on Friday. And have an excellent week.